Hey y'all, hi. Hold on to your hats. This video, finally, the video that nobody asked for because they didn't even know it was a possibility. And I can't even imagine at this point what I have done in terms of the thumbnail and the title to convince you to click on the video. Like, I don't know how I'm going to pitch it, but I'm sure I'll come up with something. And since you have now clicked, let me adequately explain to you what is going to transpire. So a couple of days ago, I took this makeup, these pieces of makeup that have recently come in PR, and I used black tape to cover up all of the branding and the labeling, the titles, the shade names, everything. Then I used a paint marker just to label each product in the simplest way. So I labeled this as eyeshadow, labeled this as blush, etc. And I gave them to my husband, Joe. And I told Joe that he had to come up with the branding for these products. So he had to name each product and come up with the shade name. I don't know what else he might have done. I kind of suggested a little bit of a pitch as to like what the product is supposed to do for you. Joe helps me with the channel. He does a lot of the editing. He does all of the tech and runs the business side of things. So he knows more about makeup at this point than he did before he started helping me. But his knowledge is extremely specific, still spotty. He still calls Charlotte Tilbury Charlotte Tillsbury. And I really don't know quite what to expect from him when it comes to branding makeup, but I can't wait to find out. I'm going to put the products on my face one at a time. And then at the end, I'll reveal what the actual products are because it is new PR. And so I will be giving a little bit of a review of each, but that's, not the point of the video. If this is your first time to my channel, then welcome. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Hannah. I love makeup. This is a beauty channel, but I try to keep a somewhat down-to-earth approach. I try not to promote overspending. And I really love doing projects like this that separate makeup from branding, basically, and kind of reveal how much of our desire for makeup has to do with the story that brands tell around that makeup. It's like what's there when you strip away the familiar branding and maybe write a new story. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes down. And if you like this, of course, I hope you'll subscribe. Now let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. Okay, product number one. This is an eyeshadow palette. Here is what Joe was given. This blank palette, and I even used a little tiny strip of tape to cover up the shade names inside so that he wouldn't have any clues as to the branding that originally came along with this product. Some of you might be able to tell what it is, or maybe even have a guess at the brand, even if you don't know what it is, based on your knowledge of makeup at large. I highly doubt that Joe has that knowledge and was able to put it together. To him, it was just a random little eyeshadow palette with these colors and textures. So let's see what he came up with. Wow. Okay, so Joe has artistically named this the Sundays Never Had palette. The Sundays Never Had. Oh, okay, so it's like the Sundays which were never had. I was thinking like the Sundays never had a chance or something, like the Sundays never had something. But no, the Sundays never had. The Sundays never had eyeshadow palette, but he's specified matte and glimmer eyeshadow palette. And the shade names are Deco. That feels like a pretty run-of-the-mill shade name for an eyeshadow. Peak. Great eyeshadow name. Loose. Gobi. I wonder if he means Gobi, like the Gobi Desert. And he's like swatched them out on the card. Deco, Peak, Loose, Gobi, Henri, and Thirst. That's the blue one. Also pretty. Also, I bet there already is a blue eyeshadow out there named Thirst. Wow, I feel like this is such an interesting juxtaposition of stuff that feels like it is sort of normal for eyeshadow, like the matte and glimmer palette, and the fact that some of the shadows are named Deco and Thirst, and then like completely out of an entirely other universe, not even vaguely adjacent to makeup, the title, The Sundays Never Had, and the eyeshadows named Peak and Henri. I'm kind of here for it. And am I here for the palette? I mean, I like this gold. Oh, it's actually pretty creamy. Loose. I like this gold called Loose. It felt creamy to the touch, and then quite a lot of it picked up on my finger. It does have that coppery undertone, which isn't always my favorite, but it's mixed enough with gold that I think I might end up with something that I like. I'm gonna put this all over each lid with my finger. Now that I'm applying it, it doesn't feel creamy anymore, and it doesn't look gold anymore either. It just looks orange. Orange! So I'm not that into that color-wise, but I'll go ahead and blend it out. I'm actually gonna I'm leaving less of it on my lids than I was planning to pack on, and I'm going to blend it out. Oh, Sundays Never Had. It's more like Pigment Never Had. The Pigment Never Had palette. Well, I mean, I'm actually, given that it's orange like this, I'm kind of glad that it's blending out to be this very soft, diffused thing. And I might as well tell you now that this is underneath the new branding. It's one of the palettes from Urban Decay's collab with Smiley, which, like, what even is that? But it's like a mini Urban Decay Naked palette. So, you know, I always say this. Urban Decay's been turning out what are, according to me, extremely unsatisfactory formulas lately. But I can only continue to assume that when they say naked, they mean naked. Like, this is what they mean. They mean the Pigment Never Had. And to add insult to injury, I'm getting fallout from it, even though it's like doing almost nothing on my lids. Come on, Urban Decay. And yeah, this beautiful like crushy gold that you see in the pan, it's that one right there, the third one in from this side. It's just not showing up at all on my eyes. What am I gonna do? This is making me wish, the way that it looks now is making me wish I had just started with like that yellow and done like a super avant-garde look. Maybe I'll try to get after that. I'm going for Henri. I'm gonna try to turn this into something that has some impact and is a little bit surprising. It picked up on the brush like, wow. I mean, it looks like it might work in the way that I'm hoping that it will. This is a Refer eyeshadow brush, so if anything is gonna pick it up like this brush would do it. So as far as I can tell, layering this over the unsatisfactory metallic, this is a pretty pigmented, warm canary yellow. It's not really serving the nudity that I have come to expect from the Pigment Never Had line. And yeah, in fact, if you've been wanting a pretty dependable yellow with which to do like an all yellow sort of Euphoria inspired eye look, and you tend to like the Naked formula or like Urban Decay, this could work. I don't really like the ketchup and mustard mixed together effect that I've gotten by layering it over that orange, but that eyeshadow has impressed me more than I expected it to. I'm actually going to try to pack it on with my finger. Oh yeah, it can be very bright. Okay, why couldn't we have some of this in the other one, the metallic? Still with the fallout though. Okay, that has made it a little bit more like something that suits me because it feels a little bit more artistic with that strong matte yellow on the lids. You know, I don't usually do all matte. I mean, what am I saying? I never do all matte looks like this, like really strong all matte looks, especially not two colors. Like I might do like a single color all over the lid, but the fact that I started in one direction and then ended up going another direction means that I've ended up with something that I almost never do. I'm not going to use the blue because I don't really like blue and yellow together like that, especially not since there's the orange there. And it's a very thirst. It's like almost a topper. That is that like lackluster Naked formula shimmer that I've come to loathe. So in an effort to continue to make this look editorial or editorial adjacent, I'm just going to put the yellow. I'm going to go in with the yellow on my lower lash line. Oh my gosh, yeah, used straight. It's great. It's even like coating my lashes. It's so intense. I guess maybe they took pains over the yellow because it's like the collab with the Smiley and this traditional Smiley is yellow. So maybe they packed pigment into the yellow and left all the rest to rot. Okay, now I am starting to feel like this is a look with artistic impact that has a point of view. And so that has kind of brought it back to being something that is one of my wheelhouses or like in a corner of my wheelhouse, and that's making it wearable for me, which is great. I'm going to add a little bit of base under here. I've finally gotten back into using the Monica blender cover, and I'm reminded of how useful it is. And the lightest shade really is pretty neutral. It's a lot like the Rose Ink Concealer, but actually because the Rose Ink Concealer changed a little bit with dry down and this doesn't, it stays even closer to my skin tone after it's been applied. That is what blender cover looks like. It's a balm foundation. And I will link below the video in which I give a thorough review of this. All right, an extremely unusual look from Sundays Never Had, which I think will be much improved by mascara. So let's move on to the mascara. That is what the brush looks like. And I know he's my husband, so I'm maybe a little bit biased, but I actually feel like this is a stroke of genius. May I present to you Obscura Blase, mascara for the casually indifferent. In the shade, I Don't Care, which apparently was a mess up and had to be scribbled out and rewritten, but you know, I don't care. Obscura Blase, also a really good drag name. Let's see how Obscura Blase performs with this skinny little spiky brush, super short spikes. Wow. Wow, I'm surprised to see mascara for the casually indifferent giving me such a thick lash, a thickened lash. Look at that. It's building quite dramatically on itself. Oh my goodness. I don't want to tell you what this really is because I think Joe's branding is so much better and I don't want to stop thinking of it as obscura blasé, but I feel like I have to tell you because it is very dramatic and it's a drugstore mascara. Let me just get it on all of my lashes and I'll show you the full effect. It's very sticky. It's like it's gripping my existing lashes. It's the opposite of a wet mascara, but it's not dry. It just feels like the formula is kind of gummy, but in a way that is working to its advantage in terms of like building structure and volume and fiber and like building stuff for more stuff to hold on to. I'd say this is definitely not a wispy lash mascara. It's like an old school splink mascara, especially the way I'm applying it, layering it on. Maybe you could get something approaching a wispy lash if you just applied one coat instead of like 500 coats like I'm doing. Pretty dramatic. So I'll tell you, this mascara is from Lottie London. They've sent me a handful of things in PR recently, and I think that the original subpar branding, the inferior branding for this has something to do with false lashes. It's like fake. It has the word fake in the title. It's like fake lash mascara or something like that. And now that I see what it's doing, that makes total sense. So this is quite the look. Maybe I should just leave it like this and really go avant-garde. So yeah, actually, if you apply just one coat, like several strokes, but not letting it dry and build and dry and build, you can get sort of a wispy lash with it. It'll do its like thickening and building thing and lifting thing without going this far. Oh, I just poked myself in the eye. I guess I wasn't being casually indifferent enough. Or maybe I should just be casually indifferent to having poked myself in the eye. But it's hard. I'm getting sort of like a 1920s vibe from the collection so far. I don't know. There's something about Sundays Never Had that makes me think of F. Scott Fitzgerald, and maybe even like under this branding, the color palette of this eyeshadow palette, like with the golds and yellows and blues, and the fact that one of them was called Deco. That also probably has planted it in my head. It has made the whole thing lean a bit 1920s for me. And then when I opened the mascara branding and it was like talking about the casually indifferent blasé attitude, it sort of reinforced that like Gatsby feel for me, which is kind of a good idea for a makeup collection, actually. I spent so long building this up on the other eye that it's like, it feels like no matter how hard I try, I can't get it to the same place on this eye, but I think I just haven't been going long enough. Wow, an extremely artistic effect overall. One would think that a mascara for the casually indifferent wouldn't be so dramatic, and yet here we are. All right, next up we have this little tube of liquid blush. Which is apparently the Lush and Falter. Lush and Falter? The Lush and Falter Effortless Cream Cheek Blush. This sounds both like it could be real makeup brand packaging and like a parody of makeup brand packaging. Lush and Falter Effortless Cream Cheek Blush in the shade Tender Bluff. Tender Bluff. These are such poetic names. I feel like Joe is really dispensing with the literal in a lot of these cases. Maybe that's what the makeup industry needs. Oh, and this is like a dark brown blush. There's just like a tiny, tiny bit because, yeah. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Okay, Tender Bluff. I think I'm going to need a brush for this. Oh. All right. I love a brown blush. I love a cool toned brown blush, but I don't know how pigmented this is. It's kind of like a gel cream. It's like a stain. I mean, I really rubbed it in and tried to kind of almost make it non-existent, but it ended up actually kind of working. I also think there might be a little bit of a powder blush on this brush that has like mixed in with it and made it a little rosier. I mean, it can be sheared out enough to, I would say, be kind of like a bronzing blush on me. Kind of reminds me a little bit of those Ciate London bronzer drops that I really liked last summer. All right, I'm getting bolder and I'm starting to go for it, and now I feel like I might regret it. I'm not really getting it. I'm just using the tiniest amount. I'm starting to bring it underneath, kind of like in that sunburn style, you know? I feel like it's working. It's giving me a more natural skin look. That's what bringing it under is doing. It's making my skin look less made up. Kind of a nice finish too. I feel like I need to put a little on my nose to complete the sunburn illusion. Well, it took some messing with it and it was a little touch and go. I thought it was a little touch and go, but I'm really actually quite pleased with the outcome of that. And I think that the natural fleshy quality, the way that it has like rubbed into my skin and sort of changed the texture of my skin, not just the color, but the texture, kind of like a glossy cloud paint. None of the cloud paints were in this dark of a color, like this dark of a brown. So I had to be a little bit more careful with this than I've ever been with a cloud paint, but I love to see it. I mean, great to have a blush like this in this color. I happen to know that underneath the gorgeous branding Lush and Falter Effortless Cream Blush, this is by Gen C, which is a new-ish brand that recently launched at Credo. They released this in a dark brown and also in like a bright magenta recently. I think that this isn't a new formula. It's a lip and cheek, but this color is new and that's why they just sent it to me. More impressed than I was expecting to be. I also feel like the overall look with the eyes has improved actually. And you know, when you do a super dramatic eye look like this, you never know whether the rest of what you put on your face is going to add or detract. And I feel like that actually, it added the kind of balance that I needed. All right, finally, we have the lip gloss. This is the last product. Here's what it looks like. And this actually isn't new to the market. It came recently in PR to me. Sort of a sheer, sparkly color. Looks like Joe had some spelling trouble up here. Okay, this is apparently the Nice and Naughty Texture Moisturizing. Texture Moisturizing. If you need to moisturize your texture, get the Nice and Naughty Texture Moisturizing Lip Gloss in the shade Stolen Cookies. All of a sudden, so I thought we were going in like an Art Deco direction, but it turns out there's something from a Christmas launch, like a holiday launch in here. The Nice and Naughty Texture Moisturizing Lip Gloss. Let's see how it looks. Oh, I have actually some lip balm on. I have already moisturized my texture today, so I don't know. I don't know what Nice and Naughty can really do for me. We'll find out. Okay, I mean, you know that I love a lip product, like a sheer lip product that lightens the color of my lips. I really love that. And it looks like this is doing that a little bit, but in a very wearable way that means I can still overline with it and it's not gonna look weird and it's not gonna look weird up close and gather. And it's like reflect is what's causing my lips to look a bit pale rather than heavy pigment that would gather in my texture, my moisturized texture. Yeah, and upon closer inspection, there are little tiny pink reflective particles in it. So exciting in a lot of ways. Stolen Cookies. So as many of you might have been able to tell from the packaging, even though it's all wrapped up in black tape, this is a Kosas lip oil. Again, not a new product, but they recently launched new shades or they recently came out with like a set, like a full-size set that you can get, and they sent that to me. The shade name of this, the actual shade name is Exposed. I've had this actually lying around for a while and I hadn't featured it yet. That's why I threw it in the pile for Joe to rebrand. But another reason I threw it in the pile for Joe to rebrand is that I feel like the branding on this product is totally off. Totally off. If ever a lip product was a lip gloss and not a lip oil, it's this. This has been on the market for quite a while, and I love the idea of a lip oil, like a sort of drenching, oily, slick, thin lip product, as opposed to a thick, kind of goopy leaning, not necessarily sticky, but like, you know, a thick gloss that coats your lips with a glossy layer. And I always thought based on the branding that this would not be that, not be the latter, but rather be the former. And I got my hands on these and it's like, oh, they're just lip glosses. Like they're really good old-fashioned lip gloss. Texture moisturizing they may be, but I really don't think Kosas should be out there calling this a lip oil. I think there are probably so many people, so many customers who went and bought this based on that branding and then were like, oh, just another lip gloss. And if you like lip gloss, and it's fine. I've tried them. I've tried this one. Actually, I don't even think I tried any of the other ones because they have more pigment in them. They're like a strong color in a lip gloss, and in this kind of thick texture in a gloss, I don't like a strong color like that. So this one's the most wearable for me. I've been wearing it a little bit, but I've been a little bit, I would say, unimpressed because of the contrast between what I was expecting and what I actually got. But here now with the rest of this look, cleaned up, like applying it as the last step as a lip, like fully as a lip, maybe also helped along by a little bit of rebranding. I actually like it. I like the color. I like the sort of pale pink, shell pink gloss that it's giving to my lips. Oh, I almost forgot. Joe also gave me this, his like swatches and inspo paper, like when he was coming up with, I guess this was his brainstorming, his creative process. Wow, there are a lot of good ideas here. It looks like Tender Bluff, the color of the Lush and Falter blush, came very close to being called Tender Butte, like Butte. So I guess bluff, Tender Bluff, he means like the bluff, like the geological feature, like a bluff looking over the ocean. I thought it was a tender bluff, like you're bluffing. It also looks like the blush almost got called Teacup. Teacup is a great color name for a blush. Plate, in the middle here, it just says plate with no explanation. The Battle of Wills Cream Cheek Blush. Cream Cheek Blush. There's also a lot here that I just can't read. Well, that was a journey in so many unexpected ways. I was definitely not expecting to end up with a look like this, let alone a look that is like this that I actually quite like. Like I'm feeling much more confident in myself in this than I would have thought I would in this look if you had just described it to me, like described the yellow and the cheek and all of that stuff. I absolutely loved doing this with the rebranding. I feel like, especially the eyeshadow palette, the original branding was totally rewritten for me in my mind. I do have a sense of what it's supposed to look like and what the art looks like on the packaging because I took it out of its box and like I was looking at it when I covered it up. I actually had to put a little like folded up piece of paper towel in there underneath the tape because there's like a big naked embossing on the cover and you could see it through the tape. So I know kind of what it looks like under there and what the vibe is of this launch. And Joe's vibe, the Sundays Never Had matte and glimmer eyeshadow palette, is totally different. When I was applying it to my lids, having described this branding to you, I was applying it kind of under a totally different fantasy. Like I had a totally different sense of what color meant, what these colors meant in that moment and what they spoke of. And because I'm more into the idea of Sundays Never Had than I am the Naked Smiley or whatever, I was a lot more into it and into the potential that it had to offer me than I was before it got rebranded. That tells me a lot of things, right? I mean, first of all, it's like maybe I'm not Urban Decay's target demographic, right? I mean, it sort of it tells us something specific about the way Urban Decay is choosing to market things and about my tastes. But larger than that, I think it tells us something about the seductiveness and meaninglessness of branding. Because say this had been marketed as the Sundays Never Had palette with shade names like Peak and Henri, and I had embarked on using it with all of the delight that I had today when I was using it, it could just as easily have been some weird Urban Decay launch with smileys and psychedelic colors and like blue and yellow illustrations and something that wouldn't really feel like it fits in my life at all. But with the same colors and maybe even the same textures, at least this matte yellow I really loved. And most importantly, the same looks, like the same outcome. And when I walk out into the world wearing this, I am the only one who knows that to me, this eye look is Art Deco adjacent, makes me think of Robert Henri, makes me think of F. Scott Fitzgerald, makes me think of the idea of nostalgia and days gone by. I'm the only one who thinks that. Anyone else who looks at me is just going to be like, oh, it's yellow. So in addition to this being great fun, I mean, obscura blasé, are you kidding me? In addition to it being fun to take advantage of Joe's creativity and sort of suck a little bit of that from him onto the screen, I also feel like an exercise like this, similar to a brand-free makeup tutorial, which is something I've done in the past and I've seen a couple of other people do, an exercise like this can really go a long way towards dismantling the hold that branding has on us as consumers, especially as people who tend to get caught in that thing of buying something in order to try to make a change or make an improvement, buying the fantasy basically in the hopes that that purchase will shift your reality a little bit, which it never really does. When there's seductive branding attached to makeup like this, it's much more likely to cause us to want to do that. So I think that it's a good practice once in a while to do what you can to try to divorce makeup from its branding. Thank you so much, Joe, for participating. Thank you for rebranding all of this makeup so delightfully. Thank you also to all of you who are watching. I appreciate you so much, those of you who are subscribed, who are always commenting. I always love reading what you have to say in the comments. And I hope that all of you out there are taking extra good care of yourselves so that you can be the most effective versions of yourselves as you do your work in the world.